This is the story they don't want you to hear. The story that shakes the very foundation of justice itself. You see, we are taught from the time we're children that the courts are sacred, that judges were those black robes to symbolize neutrality, fairness, the blindfold of Lady Justice herself. But what happens when those robes become nothing more than a costume? What happens when justice itself is put on the auction block and sold to the highest bidder? This is not just speculation, it's reality. And tonight you're about to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. Because behind the gavel, there is power. And where there is unchecked power, there's always the temptation of corruption. Let's start with a case that made headlines and left millions outraged. It was late 2024 when a corporate executive accused of fraud, stealing from pension funds, destroying thousands of lives, walked into court facing decades in prison. The evidence was overwhelming. Emails, financial records, testimony from insiders. Yet somehow, against all odds, he walked out a free man. The judge dismissed half the charges, gave him probation for the rest, and praised his contributions to the business community. Outrage poured across social media. Commentators dug into the judge's financial records and uncovered the truth. His campaign had been bankrolled by the very same company executives who stood to lose everything if their man went to prison. Coincidence? Or corruption dressed up as procedure? That single case reignited a national debate. People asked, if justice could be bought, then what hope is left for ordinary citizens? And that's the heart of this story, judicial corruption. It doesn't always look like a brown envelope slid across a desk. No, sometimes it's hidden behind donations, golf club memberships, promises of cushy jobs after retirement. Sometimes it's favoritism for the powerful. Sometimes it's harsh punishment for the poor. It wears many disguises, but its effect is always the same. Justice twisted until it no longer looks like justice at all. The illusion of impartiality is one of the most dangerous lies in America today. We grow up believing the courtroom is where the truth wins. But the truth is that the scales can be tipped with money, influence, and power. Judges are supposed to be impartial, yes, but what happens when impartiality becomes an illusion? When the outcome of your trial depends less on the facts and more on who you know, or worse, how much you can pay? That is not justice, that is business. And the product being sold is freedom. Let me pull back the curtain for you. They call it the pay-to-play pipeline. Campaign donations are the most common form. Judges in many states are elected, which means they need money to run their campaigns. Wealthy donors, corporations, law firms, they all pour money into judicial campaigns. And when their cases come before the very same judges they funded, should we really be surprised when the decisions lean in their favor? Then there are the gifts, lavish trips, expensive dinners, tickets to events. Sometimes it's not direct money, but access. Access to the powerful circles where judges are treated less like guardians of the law and more like VIP clients. And then, perhaps the most insidious of all, the promise of a golden parachute. Judges who play nice with corporations or political interests are often rewarded after retirement with lucrative positions in law firms, on corporate boards, or in consulting roles. What looks like loyalty to the law is often loyalty to the highest bidder. But don't just take my word for it. Look at the cases. A small-town woman sues a massive pharmaceutical company after her husband dies from a defective drug. The jury sides with her, awarding damages. But then the judge overturns a verdict, citing technical issues. Later, it's revealed that the pharmaceutical giant was one of the largest donors to the judge's re-election campaign. Or consider the case of a young man sentenced to decades in prison for nonviolent drug possession, while a wealthy executive convicted of embezzling millions serves only a few months. The difference? The executive's legal team had direct ties to the judge. These aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of a system designed to protect the rich and crush the poor. And here's where the ripple effect begins. Victims of corruption are not just names on paper. They are real people with shattered lives. Families torn apart because a corrupt judge sided with the abuser in a custody battle. Innocent men spending decades behind bars because the prosecutor and judge had cozy ties. Communities losing faith in the courts altogether. Because why bother seeking justice if the verdict has already been sold? Each corrupted judgment spreads like poison, eroding public trust, deepening inequality. and creating a society where justice is no longer blind. It's for sale. And it doesn't stop with individuals. The economy itself suffers when justice can't be trusted. Investors, businesses, innovators, they hesitate to operate in places where outcomes can be bought because uncertainty destroys confidence. When the courts are compromised, the entire system of democracy trembles. Because without justice, there is no freedom. Without justice, there is only power. But here's the twist. Corruption doesn't always stay hidden forever. Investigative journalists, whistleblowers, and activists have been the light in the darkness. Brave reporters risk careers, and even lives to expose the backroom deals. Whistleblowers, clerks, lawyers, even fellow judges have stepped forward, revealing emails, recordings, and secret agreements that expose the rot. And when these stories come to light, the outrage is explosive. Remember the case of the Pennsylvania kids for cash scandal, where 2 judges were found guilty of taking kickbacks to send juveniles to private detention centers. That wasn't uncovered by the courts themselves. It was uncovered by relentless journalism and whistleblowers who refused to stay silent. Without them, the corruption would still be hidden. But exposure is only the first step. Accountability remains rare. Judges are protected by powerful systems. Oversight committees are often weak or toothless. Impeachment is rare. Transparency is limited. And so, the corruption festers. People ask, why aren't corrupt judges punished? The answer is simple. Because the system protects its own. And yet, cracks are forming. Activists and reformers are demanding stronger ethics rules, mandatory financial disclosures, term limits for judges, and real oversight. Organizations across the country are calling for reform, some pushing for cameras in courtrooms, others for stricter conflict of interest laws, and still others for entirely new systems of accountability. And here's where you, the citizen, come in, because the fight for justice isn't just for lawyers. It isn't just for politicians. It belongs to all of us. Every vote in judicial elections matters. Every petition for reform adds weight. Every time you speak up, you are tipping the scales back toward fairness. The truth is, change has never come from silence. It comes from ordinary people demanding better. Now, let's be clear, this isn't just a documentary. This is a warning. Corruption in the judiciary is not just a problem of the past. It is happening right now. And the question is, how much longer will we allow it to go unchecked? Because somewhere in America today, another case is being decided not on the facts, not on the law, but on money. Another innocent person will be condemned. Another guilty party will walk free. And if we don't act, if we don't shine a light on this darkness, it will consume the very foundation of justice itself. But just when you think you've seen it all, a case emerges that is so shocking, so outrageous. It makes everything I've told you tonight feel small in comparison. A case that exposes the full, terrifying reach of judicial corruption. A case that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that justice in America can be bought. And in part 2, we're going to uncover that case. Because once you hear it, you will never look at a courtroom the same way again. So I leave you with this. What is justice worth if it has a price tag? And what happens to a nation when its judges are no longer guardians of the law, but merchants of power? Do you think America can ever have a truly fair justice system? Or is corruption too deeply rooted to ever be undone? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters in this fight. And don't forget, if this story opened your eyes, hit that subscribe button now. Because part 2 will take you even deeper into the darkness of corruption, and trust me, you don't want to miss it.